Hi and welcome to a new video. In this video I wanted to go through some of the questions I've been asked quite a few times, and most of them are around the Wi-Fi settings, specifically the advanced settings that you'll find on the screen right now. So how you access this is you can go through via the app, or you can, the preferred way that I prefer is to actually go by the actual by your browser, so using Safari, Chrome or Edge or Internet Explorer if you're still using that. So basically using the browser so you can access your router's all the features, and then going to advanced settings, and then underneath that going to wireless, and then you'll see the numerous tabs that actually are displayed at the top here. So I just wanted to quickly go through them because there's been some updates since my last video, and I think that was last year now. So this is just going to be around the advanced settings on the wireless options. I'll quickly go through most of these here because you might already know, but I'll give you a bit of background, and then we'll go into more detail on the professional tab, because I think that's where some of the questions were coming up, and some features are actually hidden and people don't actually realize that they're there. And it could add a good something that you actually require, and you're thinking, oh, perhaps I need to get another router or something. So we'll start off with the general tab. So as you can see here, under general, for the advanced Wi-Fi settings, you can enable the smart connect. And what the smart connect means is that you're combining with this particular router. So this is my GT-AX11000. So this is tri-band, so it has three bands. It has one 2.4 gigahertz band and two 5 gigahertz bands. So what that does is basically makes life much easier for you. You switch that on and all you see is one network name. So this network name here, or the SSID, so in this particular instance Wi-Fi name, but whatever particular one is yours, you'll just see that one, and then the router will then choose by itself what device will go on what band. So it automatically is quite clever enough to realize that some of the faster devices, it will connect to the 5 gigahertz frequency, and some of your older IoT devices or Internet of Things devices, like your doorbells and then your smart plugs and things, but it better to connect to the 2.4 gigahertz, so it automatically do it there. My personal preference, as I've said before in previous videos, is I prefer to switch this off and then have my separate Wi-Fi bands. So in your case, if you have a different ASUS router or any router really, if you have dual bands, then you can separate the 2.4 and the 5, so they've each got their own name, and you can connect the devices manually. I do prefer that just so I can have a faster band. So the second 5 gigahertz frequency, I can have just my faster devices, so like the newer tablets, mobile phones, your Xbox and your PlayStations can all go on that one, and your slower devices can go on the other 5 gigahertz frequency band, and then of course your other devices can go on the 2.4. So it's just your personal preference, but that's my opinion anyway. So the next one you're going down, as we just already said, that's your network name. So you name your network for the 2.4. Then you've got hide your SSID, so that's hide your network name. So that's like a security feature where if you tick yes, it will actually hide it. So when you come to open your new tablet, your phone or anything like that, and you try to search for your network, you will not be able to find it, because it's not actually broadcasting the name of the Wi-Fi. It is broadcasting, so it's people use it as either a security feature, and I know a lot of people will probably tell you that it basically, people can still, if a hacker wants to get into your network, then they still can see your network. They won't see the name. But again, for convenience and for most home users, I'd say you just leave that to no, because you don't want to hide it. And the day you just want convenience more than, and this doesn't add that much more security. Next one, you've got wireless mode. So as we are on the 2.4 gigahertz band here, we've got selected. So you'll see the options here for the wireless mode. You're going to have auto, N only, and legacy. So what do those mean? So basically, if you've got it on auto, then it will support everything. So your Wi-Fi, it'll be Wi-Fi 4, 5, and basically 6 devices. It will support all the legacy devices, so Wi-Fi B and G, as you'll see here, as well as the old naming of Wi-Fi devices is. You can have, if you want to, you can select N only. So if you don't have any Wi-Fi B or G devices, and it's very rare now that you're going to have something with that older technology. Even quite a few few year old devices that I've got are still capable of Wi-Fi N. So if you want to get the best performance out of your 2.4 gigahertz frequency, I'd advise that you actually go to and select N only. But again, it has got here, so it does allow the B and G still to connect if need be, or you can leave it on auto. It's up to you, but if you're like me and if you've verified that all your devices, you don't have any B and G devices, they're all wireless N, then get the best out of the bandwidth and just select N only on there instead of auto. Then you've got the Wi-Fi Agile multiband, so you've got that enabled and disabled. So multiband is for better Wi-Fi coverage and improved connection speed. So you've got different from roaming features provided by different router companies. So basically, every router normally is a Wi-Fi standard, so they should have some kind of multiband connected. And as we said, what this does is actually give you better Wi-Fi coverage and improved connection speed. The feature basically makes good use of network resources and balances the bandwidth and stops things like your router overloading, and it rearranges the clients in the bands and everything else uncrowded. The Wi-Fi Agile multiband can also reduce the switching time when you walk from one access point to another. So if you are using multiple routers connected together using AI mesh or using something else, then that multi-band is something always good to switch on. So it's always good to have that enabled. I think it depends on what router you've got, so it might be on by default or not. It's up to you, but I would advise to leave that enabled on to enabled. Then you've got target wake time, so it's not really clear. That does actually come as disabled on my router anyway, on the latest firmware. And you can choose what you want to do with that. So with target wake time, that enables devices to determine when and how frequently they will wake up and send or receive data. So basically, you know when your phone goes to sleep. So this will basically essentially allows 802.11 or Wi-Fi 6 features kind of thing on this one. It effectively increases devices' sleep time and significantly conserves battery life. Especially for your IoT devices and things like that. So that's the main feature of this, is that it'll save and conserve battery life on your devices that are connected. So it is advisable again to leave that enabled. Again, just be careful, when you are changing these, if you've got any old devices that you're worried about that might not be compatible with these features, best to switch one of these on at a time enabled, and make them verify that each of your devices are reconnecting before you go on to the next one, instead of changing them all, because then you won't know which one is causing the problem if you do have any. But it shouldn't. These ones are standard Wi-Fi and built into the actual standard, so I wouldn't advise that there'll be any problems with those. So again, the next one is your channel bandwidth. So again, you can choose here 20 or 40. So of course, the lower the number, the longer the distance. And so if you're having problems, say if you want yours is on 40 and you're not getting enough distance on your Wi-Fi signal, let's say to the back of the house or wherever it is further away from your router, it is always then probably advisable to leave that on to 20. But the thing is that you can leave it on 20 and 40. But then it will start switching. So again, I would advise just to leave that on 20 if you're having issues only with distance. But if you are happy and you have got some other devices, then of course leave it on 2040. because then you will be getting the 40 increases the bandwidth, so you can get faster devices connected on your 2.4, and it's much better. So for your doorbells and your cameras, IP cameras and things like that. So again, best to leave that at 2040 unless you're having distance problems, then put it to 20. Again, verify your devices. So like mine, I know that my Nest doorbell and then the other devices on the 2.4, they're capable of 40 megahertz. So I'll just then flick that straight to 40, so everything gets the best bandwidth and the most speed. But again, you've got to be careful with your devices, and if you are unsure, leave it as 2040. You've got your control channel here. So this is your main channel that you've got for your Wi-Fi. So as you can see here, you can select this to auto. So normally it defaults to auto, and then you can then choose your different Wi-Fi channels. So as you've seen in my previous videos, there is a Wi-Fi radar feature built in, and also some of these Wi-Fi analyzer apps you can download for your Google phone. This will tell you the strength of your Wi-Fi signal, and then if there's interference. So if you scan your network, your home, and then you see that you've got many neighbors all using the auto channel that is, say, it's selected as 6. So everyone's using 6, of course you're going to get more interference and your slower speeds and connection. So then you can see, okay, I'll go for 1, and then you can then choose the banding that literally you can go through them and see which one gives you the fastest. It is best if it is on, is if you choose either 1 or 6. Normally that's the most common for most of the devices that I personally have. You can try, but if you're having problems again with disconnections and things like that, then try the different bands here. As you see, you've got an extension channel, so as I've only got it on 1, so it's always going to be above, because it's still got to be these ones here, so it auto select another channel. If you had it on 6, then you'll have below as well, so it'll choose numbers below as well. So again, use the Wi-Fi radar, and then any apps you can find on the Google Play Store, and I believe probably on your iPhone as well, in the App Store. You'll probably have apps there for Wi-Fi analyzers as well, and just have a look and see what's the best channel for you around where you are. Again, and then you can just change it here, and then don't forget your devices will disconnect. And again, it's just a warning is that most devices should reconnect, but if you're changing the channel, and if you've set the channel on your IP camera, say, I know some of the older ones, you have to confirm what channel the actual Wi-Fi is on. So of course, if you're selecting this, and it will disconnect your device then. So it's always best to check your devices, make sure that they're compatible with what you're changing here before you do anything, because you don't want, we rely on Wi-Fi devices more and more nowadays, and you want to make sure they connect and not give you more trouble. So again, as we've gone through, is the extension channel. Again, we've got next is the authentication method. So this is the encryption, basically that works with the WPA encryption down here. You only have one choice here. So here you do have several choices. So you can have open system. So that means anyone can access your internet. So it's never a good idea if you're a home user unless you're a business. Then you've got WPA2, WPA3 personal, and then you've got the ones here that are several different standards, the personal and then enterprise. You do have the choice of the enterprise ones, but normal home users probably won't use that. We'll be using these ones here. Again, it's always advisable never to use a WPA one, again, because there's security issues. So I'd advise, some of my devices aren't compatible with WPA3 and some are. So I've got it on both of them. So for extra security, like my desktop computer and then my tablet and phone, you will now been updated recently, so they now support WPA3. But I've got some other devices that are not compatible, so they need WPA2. So I'd advise to go for this option for best security and compatibility. Again, you don't have an option here, it's only set to AES. Again, here is your actual, where it says your WPA pre-shared key, so basically that's your Wi-Fi password. Again, it gives you an indication over here. It's quite good how strong your password is. With passwords, you've got to make sure you do a complex password that includes like special characters and things like that. But again, don't get carried away. Like I found with some compatibility issues before, where you make the password so long, and then some of the devices that I bought won't connect, and then I realised it's because they only support up to say 32 characters, even though you can put 64 in here. So just be wary on the devices that you've got around there, and then the password lengths, and then just make sure you get to the maximum you can. Again, you've got protected management frame, so you've got several options here: disabled, capable, and required. So it doesn't really make it very clear what the protected management frames are. So protected management frames is a standard that was defined by the Wi-Fi Alliance. So that's like the governing body kind of thing for governance of Wi-Fi standard. So what it is to enhance Wi-Fi connection safety. Again, there's some different like wording around it. So it provides unicast and multicast management actions. So basically, it makes it a more secure method when working with WPA2 and WPA3. So it can also improve the protection. So basically, on there is a security feature. So it will, if you do select required, again on the 2.4. I would leave it as capable, definitely not disabled, but leave it as capable. So if the device does support it, it will connect to it. If it doesn't, then it will still connect. If you leave it as required, then if you've got some older devices, then they might not connect. But if you've verified that all your devices are compatible with this, then there's no issues. Leave it as required, because that gives you more security on your devices. So it's the packets of information that's going back and forward with the encryption. It basically protects these little data packets more securely. So if you do have devices that are fairly all new and do support that, then leave it on required. But I would say personally leave it as capable. So at least you have best of both worlds for a bit of privacy, extra security, and compatibility. So next one is your group key rotation interval. So again, sometimes they don't make it very user friendly on the wording they put in here. So basically, I think they've got they have a like breakdown, so you can click on sometimes a little question mark. So they basically, here is a group key, so how long the key will change. So this time is in seconds, and as you can see here, you can enter a value between 1 and I think that's 2,592,000 seconds, and that's just to share. You can change the key. So if you do put this too low, this figure, it'll make it more secure because you're changing the key all the time, but the router will be working doubly hard. So just be wary when you're playing around if you're going to change this. Again, if you want to become overly security conscious and you start changing the numbers on this one, it will affect the router's CPU, and it will work it much harder because it will keep changing, and also your devices will keep having to change the key as well. So it's advisable to leave that at 3,600. But again, if you are quite confident, you know what you're doing with your devices, then you can change this to make it more secure. But I would leave that as default. Okay, so next we'll move on to the 5 GHz band. So now we've selected the 5 GHz frequency. So as you can see, my options here, I have 3 bands. Yours might only have 2 on your ASUS router. So it might be, options will still be roughly the same. Again, I won't go over the ones we've just gone over in the 2.4. I probably will talk too much anyway. So literally I won't go over those. So I'll only go over the ones that are different. So wireless mode, I know we went through before, but these options are different under the 5 GHz. So don't forget, my particular router is Wi-Fi 6. And again, if you have a Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 5, or even a Wi-Fi 4 router, then these options might be a little bit different for you, but they'll be roughly the same perspective. So as you can see here, you have auto. Again, it's quite clear. Let the router automatically basically select the band for the wireless mode, and normally it will select it into auto, so it will allow everything to connect, including legacy devices. Then you've got AX only, so that's only allow Wi-Fi 6 devices. So if you're pretty sure you've only got Wi-Fi 6 devices, then you can select this one. If you're like me, that on this band here, so this is the first 5 gigahertz frequency of my one, and I connect some of the older devices as well as Wi-Fi 6 devices. They're not too much high priority like the PlayStation, Xbox kind of thing, and get PC gaming. Then this goes on here. So I normally would select here is for Wi-Fi N, AC, and AX. So it's a mix. So it will allow the Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, and Wi-Fi 6 devices to connect. It won't slow too much down as well, and it'll adapt the speeds, so you won't slow them down. Again, you've got legacy here, but for that I would really 100% not recommend putting legacy, because that will probably normally restrict speed to about 54 megabits per second. So that's like really old speeds now, and you don't want to be doing that. So either choose AX only if you've only got Wi-Fi 6 devices, or as advised, best for compatibility and for anything, and you still get the speed, is you leave it on mixed. So I'd leave it on there. We've already went through the agile multiband, the wait time, and the only one as you can see here is different as well is the channel bandwidth, because it's the 5 gigahertz frequency. You'll see on my particular router we have 160 megahertz, so you can see the bandwidth before in the 2.4 was only 20 and 40. Now we have 80 and 160. So again, the bigger these numbers, the more bandwidth, the more speed you can connect at. But the problem is the higher this number, the frequency, the shorter the distance. So of course you can still go quite far, to be honest. And when I've tried with 80 and 160 megahertz devices, especially my tablet and laptop, then they can still connect quite a bit of a distance. But again, it's not as much as the 20 and the 40. But again, we are all about on the Wi-Fi 5. These devices hopefully will be a bit newer. Even in the last few years, devices will still be compatible with the 40 and 80. Only newer devices will start, Wi-Fi 6 will start to get to the 160 megahertz frequency. Most will either sit at the 40 or 80. So again, with this one, I recommend that you just select here and have all the options here, unless you know you want a particular speed. So if you want only devices, so if you've got this, say this was your network, you only want your new tablet, your gaming PC, or your PlayStation or Xbox, and you want those devices, and you know they're compatible because they've got the newer chipset for Wi-Fi 6, and you want them to be connecting at the maximum speed for the best ping and everything else, then you're going to select that for 160, because those devices will be compatible, but many other devices will not be able to see this channel. So then you can dedicate it just to those ones, and there'll be less interference as well. So again, it's just a thing, it's personal preference on how your home set up. Everything else, as we've gone through before, is the same. Again, with the authentication encryption and the pre-shared key and the group key rotation interval. So that's the general tab done. So now we'll move on to the WPS. So for the wireless WPS, so that's the Wi-Fi protected setup. So in your router, like your printers and sometimes other devices, you'll find when you buy them, they'll have like a round button where it says WPS, or two like arrows going round in a circle. And what that was originally meant to do is make things much easier for convenience. So literally is a push of a button. You push the button on your device and then on your router. They would automatically connect with each other, and you won't have to enter passwords or anything like that. Again, with technologies like this that make life very convenient for people and for the normal personal consumer like us, where it makes things much easier, also makes it much easier for people to exploit. Again, we've got to have clear balance between having security and convenience, and this was definitely something where I don't recommend you switching on or having on unless you really need it. It only takes 5-10 minutes to type in your password, even on your printer or whatever device you're setting up, and it's much more secure. Having this on will open up to any person, even someone with hardly any knowledge. There's apps out there and things like that that can start guessing your PIN code and actually it's not secure at all. So I think by default ASUS do have this switched off anyway, but if you do have it on, I would advise to switch it off and not use it. So next we'll move on to the WDS tab. So WDS, that actually is a wireless distribution system. As you can see on the screen here, it's got a quite good explanation already of what exactly you need to do. So I won't spend much time on it. So basically what this is basically it connects you wirelessly to another device, another router, or it could also be considered as a repeater mode on this. So basically you're going to repeat another access point or wireless device's information, and basically copy that information and then broadcast it from this device. So as you can see here, you've got the basic configuration. So you'll have the 2.4, the 5, and if you have got the same kind of router as mine, you'll have the second 5 gigahertz frequency, and that's just your MAC addresses that you might need for your other device. You'll see here the band as well, so you'll see you can select what band you want to be repeating on, and also the mode here. So you'll have AP only, so that means that you're basically just acting like it is now. If you do want to switch it on, then you can have WDS, and then it will just act as a repeater, or you can have hybrid, so it will act as a access point and a wireless distribution system as well. So it will act as both of them. So this is quite good if you haven't got AI mesh or something like that, and or perhaps your other router is a different make. So you want to repeat that signal. Then all you do on here is you can connect and yes, and then you'll select from this drop down here. Once you click that arrow, it will give you basically a list of all your you'll be able to see your neighbors, and you'll see hopefully the wireless network that you want to copy, and then all you have to do is click the plus and then apply, and then it should automatically then start to work once you set up the details as well on your other router, and then it will basically connect to that and then repeat the information through. So basically it will just work as a repeater. You know, sometimes you can get the smaller ones that plug into the power socket and they repeat your signal. They're not very good for speed, but they are good if perhaps you haven't got a weak signal somewhere else. But we've got AI mesh, and we've got other features that are much more suited than using this. Okay, so moving on to the wireless MAC filter. So on here, as we can see here, on the wireless MAC feature here, so basically this is a security feature for your wireless network. So again here you can select your network that you want to set up, and then you can enable MAC filter, and then here you can choose what the list does. So you can have it accept or reject. So basically if you list all your devices here, so when you click this drop down, it will give you a list of all devices connected to your network. You select them all, plus one at a time, add them to the list down here, and then if it's on accept up here, it will only allow these devices to connect to your wireless network. Anything else, anything new or anything like that tries to connect, it will just reject it straight away. And of course it's the opposite. So if you want to reject, you've got a device on there that you're not too sure of, or that there's someone, one of your neighbors has been stealing your Wi-Fi or something like that, then you can change the opposite. So you can then select that device on here, click add, and then click reject here. So this then will reject that device and won't allow it onto your network. So basically you can do it that way there. This is like a security feature. So it filters by the MAC address of your device. You know, like you have an IP address. Each internet device has a MAC address actually associated with it. That's hard coded in. Again, you'll probably find some very security conscious people have this switched on, and again, it's not foolproof. If someone really wants to get into your network, they can scan your network and find real MAC addresses of devices connected to your network, and then basically replicate that address so it can bypass this. But again, it's something as an extra feature that's actually built in, and if it would stop just the odd few people trying, if you think it is, and it might be a feature someone might want to use, then it's there for you to use. Next is moving on to the radius setting. So again, this is a more of an enterprise feature. So as you'll see when we went through the general tab and when we saw the basically the encryption and then the wireless connection with the WPA2 and the WPA3 personal, there was two options there for enterprise. So if you've got a I think normally for if you're like quite advanced home user and perhaps you have a pfSense router setup, or you have some other kind of setup there, you can set up a radius server on that, and then basically you type in the IP address of where that radius server are, and then basically the secret is the password to connect to it. And then so basically instead of having a Wi-Fi password, you'll enter a username and password. So it's more of an enterprise business kind of feature, but it's good for more security as well. But again, due to compatibility of quite a lot of devices, even some of my newer devices are not compatible with enterprise. So just be careful if you're thinking, oh, this is much more convenient, much more secure way of Wi-Fi devices connecting. A lot of them won't support this, so they won't be able to connect. But it's there anyway. If you do have some devices that you are in a business environment, and then you do want to have it, then the feature is there for you. I'll come back to professional. We'll go that in more detail, and then we'll just quickly go over the roaming block list. So again, as it says here, it is basically a block list here for roaming devices. If you have AI mesh, or as we said, you've set up WDS between, and so you've got multiple access points, and you want a certain device not connecting to this device, and then you can block it basically from roaming across. So as it said here, you can add devices into the roaming denied list, and this device will not roam between AI mesh nodes. So basically, say example here that I've added is my Apple device, and then I've just selected it from the drop down here, added the plus, clicked apply. So this device will now not go between the different networks. If I know that I've got, like, say, you've got this one is the GT-AX11000, so this is like one of the top of the range Wi-Fi routers, and perhaps you've got Wi-Fi 5. You had a spare router, ASUS, and you connect it by your AI mesh. Of course, you'll want your fastest speeds, and that will be from this router here. So you don't want it moving from anywhere else. You want it just to always connect. Even though it will get closer to the other router, it won't disconnect and connect to that slower router. It will stay with the faster router. So this is the feature that will be best for you. So now we'll move on to the professional tab. So the wireless professional, this is where you've got much more refined settings for your Wi-Fi, so the different bands as well. So again, there is some differences, but mainly they're the same across the 2.4, the 5 gigahertz frequencies. So I'll try and go through these as quick as possible, and again in the description I'll add some definitions there as well to give you an idea, because these are sometimes a little bit technical, and people prefer to read them afterwards. So again, here straightforward is the band. As we said here, you can choose when you're updating these settings what they which band they're actually updating to, and specify to which one. You've got enable radio, so of course this is enabling the Wi-Fi. So if you select no, it'll turn off the Wi-Fi for that particular band you have selected. So for 2.4, if I say no, it'll switch off the radio for that. Then you've got enable wireless scheduler. So again, this is one that's quite hidden away. So if you want your wireless to switch on and off a certain time, so at night time, you do have the parental controls options, but say if you want your wireless to actually be switched off, you can come in here, go to select yes, so it will be for the 2.4, click on time scheduling, and then you'll be able to come here and you'll be able to see all the different times, and then you can select when you want to actually have the start time for this schedule, and then the off time and how many hours the end time, and across the days as well. So it is quite good to have. I don't know why it's hidden away in this a little bit. I suppose it's because you can disable some of the Wi-Fi and everything else. But again, it's quite a good feature to have if you do want to have your Wi-Fi on certain bands switched off at a certain time. Then you've got the option there. And again, all you do is you just select a yes for enable wireless scheduler for that one. Again, you've got set the AP, so that's the access point, so basically the router. Set the isolated, so it's basically saying for this particular 2.4 gigahertz that we've got selected, or if you had it for the 5, did you want to isolate this? So basically, if you've got a lot of devices or you have a lot of guests coming to your house and you don't want them, you give them the 2.4 gigahertz frequency password, so you don't set up your guest networks like you do have the option down here, and you prefer, because they're quite regular, so then you can just give them the password to it, and this will stop if you click yes on this one for isolated, it'll stop them actually communicating with each other, so we won't be able to see each other's shares and things like that. So it's an extra security feature there, but I do recommend, probably if it is that scenario you're going to be using, it's best to use the guest network than actually using the isolated one. Again, the other feature you could use for this one is for security. So if you have like the smart plugs and a certain unsecure made in certain countries where it's probably made by a small company and the security is not going to be updated never, and you don't want it affecting any of your other devices, then you can select that to be yes, so that it can't affect, or if it gets hacked or that device gets some kind of virus or malware or crypto locker kind of thing, then you can it won't affect the others because it's isolated, you can't see the others. So that's just an option there as well. So moving on to roaming assistant, as you can see here, it does have an explanation here. So basically, in network configurations that involve multiple access points or wireless repeaters, wireless clients sometimes cannot connect automatically to the best access point because they're still connected to the main wireless router. Enable this setting so the client will disconnect from the main wireless router if the signal strength is under a specific threshold and connect to a stronger signal. So basically what it's just saying is, if you've got you won't normally need to enable this feature if you do have AI mesh enabled. This is normally for different brands, but say you've got your ASUS router in the front and then another brand router in the back of the house, and you walk up to the back of the house, it will try and make sure, if your device is not that new and doesn't have the built-in technology for roaming, it'll make sure that if it's got a stronger signal with the back router, it'll disconnect it from the main router at the front and force it to connect to the one at the back. So that's a good option to have if you've got multiple different manufacturers and brands for if you've got a mesh network. The next one is Bluetooth. Again, this one here is a limitation it puts on. So even if you've got Bluetooth devices right next door, they don't interfere that much. So I'd leave that disabled. Basically, it'll just, as it says here, it'll set the data rate. It'll basically disable the Bluetooth data rate, so your data will be at 1 and 2 are not allowed, and it will also turn off TX bursting and also certain other features. So you don't need to really, unless you really are having serious problems, you've got Bluetooth everywhere, I'd leave that disabled. So enable IGMP snooping. It sounds like it's not very good, but it's actually good because it allows the router to actually see what data kind of you're processing. So if it's games from your PlayStation, or it's just you're streaming something, or if you're just watching, or if you're just basically reading some pages on the web, it will help the actual AI protection and also some of the game acceleration features as well. So it will help it basically identify what you're doing on the internet. It doesn't look there and read it and then send it anywhere else. It just identifies it from a table and says, okay, that's gaming information that you're doing, so that's a priority. And because you've got rules set up for your gaming on your game acceleration or anything or AI protection, you've got that website blocked and things like that. So it's always good to have it enabled. There's no privacy or anything around that. You have next is the multicast rate. Again, I think it gives you not much information. So on here is it's auto. So basically you can choose what speed if you want the multicast rate to be connected at for your devices. Again, I have tried different ones of these, and because I have different levels of devices that are a few years old to quite a few years old, that go to Wi-Fi 4 and 5, I always prefer to leave it on auto, because I think I've tried to get more speed on devices by leaving it at 54, but it seems to be disconnecting issues and things like that. But if you have got newer devices, then it's always best to try and get the fastest speed out of all of them all the time. Then you can choose the relevant speed. But again, I would leave that as auto, to be honest, because I did have issues with my devices. Again, we've got the preamble type, so you've got long and short. So again, with these ones, they don't really give you a lot of information, but basically it's better compatibility and signal coverage, but less performance for the 2.4 gigahertz signal coverage is more important than performance, and performance should be done in like the 5 gigahertz frequency. So basically its default is long, but as you can see here, I think it does give you information on here. So on here, so yeah, so basically using long is for older wireless devices. So if you can, I'd leave it on short. I think it does default to long, but that's for compatibility. So again it's, check your devices, do these things at a time to make sure all your devices reconnect, like your Rokus and things like that, and then at least then you'll know that's that one option that's causing a problem for a certain device not connecting, so you can go back and switch it. If you start changing all of these at the same time, I know it's much quicker, but then you don't know which one has caused the problem, because Wi-Fi devices sometimes are a bit finicky, and it just give you a headache kind of thing, so you don't want to give yourself more trouble. So again, change these here. But yeah, as again, if it's on long, that's just for compatibility of older devices. We've got the AMPDU RTS. So basically all that means is it's better error handling. Again, it's only normally for the 2.4 gigahertz network. So it's better it's on because it's for better compatibility and signal coverage. So it's enabled normally by default for compatibility, and it checks for errors and everything else. So it's best to leave that on. So moving on to the RTS threshold. So you'll see there the number, the 2347. So that's normally the default for most devices. And basically the RTS, so there's got basically the meaning is request to send. And then you also find a CTS as well. It's on some of the other routers. That means clear to send. And these ask devices on your network for permission to send the next data packet. So basically a lower CTS threshold or an RTS threshold makes for more stable Wi-Fi networks. And I think the default is, as it's set up here, is 2347. So there's no need to really change this one here. If your Wi-Fi network is stable, set the RTS threshold to the maximum. And that's what this is 2347 is the maximum, so that's the default. If you are having issues or dropout, so if your Wi-Fi signal often drops out, or if you need to frequently restart your router, you can try lowering this number, and that will make your actual network more stable. So if you do have issues, you can lower this number. This is the 2347, it's a bit of an odd number, but this is the actual maximum on all routers. That's the Wi-Fi standard. And then, so it's best to, if you are having problems, as I said, you can try lowering this number just by 2 increments at a time, just to make sure as you go down. Next is the DTIM interval and the beacon interval. So what are they? So again, that don't help sometimes with these acronyms they have. So the DTIM interval is a measurement of when your device receives additional notifications that wake them up from their sleep mode. So that could be your tablet, your computer, your network storage device. It could be any device that goes to sleep to save power and switches off the Wi-Fi kind of thing. So it wakes up in sleeping mode. So this goes in hand with the beacon interval. So for example, your beacon interval is normally going to be set to 100, and this means the beacon will broadcast every 100 milliseconds. Your DTIM interval determines with which beacon broadcast your device is wakened from a sleeping state. So if your DTIM interval is set to 1, this means that every beacon that is sent will contain an additional message that will wake the device. If the DTIM interval is set to 100, this means the device will receive the message with every 100 of the beacons. So basically, it can affect the performance and things like that. And so how it affects it is that the shorter the interval will allow your devices to connect to the network faster. So that's why it's always defaulted to the 1 and the 100, as you can see here. So basically keeping the DTIM interval at 1 and the beacon interval at 100 will be ideal, I think, for nearly majority of people. But however, it is important to point out the main drawback with this is it heavily consumes the power of your battery in your device because it's waking it up checking. In fact, a lower DTIM interval could potentially use up 20% more battery power. So higher settings will allow your computer to stay in power save mode more often, which will provide you with longer battery life. Of course, then with that, there's a drawback, however, that with connectivity may be affected with multiple devices are online and the network might not be synchronized properly. Again, so these options are here if you really want to play around with your Wi-Fi network and try and get the very best out of it, which with each of these actual numbers and everything. So you can start playing around with them. I will leave some links into the description so you can have a look up yourself with changing the number and anything else there. So again, just be careful when you are using these and changing them, that because sometimes you can just cause more problems than than you're trying to solve. So next we will go on to the enable TX bursting. So normally it will be, I think it's defaulted as disabled. So as we see here, it does have an explanation on this one. So you got there selecting enables TX bursting to improve the transmission speed of G devices. So what it means by G device, it means the very old, I think like Wi-Fi 2 is that. Basically very old devices, it'll help out. So if you don't have any of them very old Wi-Fi devices, best to leave that disabled as default. Again, here we've got the Wi-Fi multimedia. So that, again, that's to another standard feature to help improve multimedia applications on your Wi-Fi network. So again, that should be enabled by default. If it isn't, then enable. That shouldn't cause you any trouble with those there. Next is down with the no acknowledgement. So again, here is basically on here is it. I think it gives you a good explanation here. Is the acknowledge policy of at the Mac level. When enabled, it results in more efficient throughput but higher error rates. So if you've got like you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no much frequency kind of thing, and you know there's not going to be much overlapping of other people's Wi-Fi networks, you can enable this to make it go your network more quicker. But the problem is that then if you are in a crowded area, then this can cause a lot of disconnects and errors and a lot of problems with devices. So if majority of people, I would say leave this disabled. Next, we're moving on to the again is in the multimedia. So this is a power delivery feature. So again, this is just helps with devices and in saving time, saving battery power and things like that. And I think it should be enabled by default. Again, you've got the optimize. So you've got these ones here. Again, they don't make very clear on what these acronyms are and everything else. So again, I'll put that down in there. So basically, this one here for optimize the AMPDU aggregation. So it should be default is basically disabled. So that's handling high error rates but less performance. So enable it unless you are in a high interference environment. And as I said, the default is disabled. So basically, I'd leave that disabled and everything else. So the modular scheme that we've got here. So again, this is should be defaulted to the highest QAM. So again, about QAM is there is some routers out there at 4,000 QAM, but they're only Wi-Fi 5 or 6 routers and not the Wi-Fi 6E routers, not the latest. That's again, it's again how much bandwidth and speed you can get through on your router. So again, it depends on your ASUS router, but on my particular GT-AX11000, this goes up to a 1024 QAM. So you should definitely on here always select the highest number. You want the highest speed going, and that's the whole point of these routers. So if it is default to something else, it's always best to make sure you've got the highest bandwidth there. Next ones are going to be quite straightforward. So again, this is airtime fairness. So it's again your devices when you've got them. So when the device that you wish to boost is the faster speed, or if you want to improve performance of a network as a whole, especially on Wi-Fi N, it should be enabled by default. So it'll give you, if you're on, like you've got one device that's like 12 megabytes connection and another one's capable of 300, it'll give the 300 one the better speed and won't just slow down because the other one is slow as well. So it gives you better there. Again, this one here is the multi-user, multi-inputs, multiple outputs. That means it can literally take your you can send and receive at the same time, basically ins and out of data. So it can multitask much better is the main behind it. So it can multitask your Wi-Fi all at the same time. So it's always best to have that enabled. Again, you've got, this is a new feature, multiple for Wi-Fi 6 devices or 11AX devices. So this is basically a newer feature of the multi-user, multi-out kind of technology. I think it does default to either disabled or download only for this. I have, if you've got compatible devices that are newer than mine, as I said, I've got quite some older devices, so I've left it on just for download. But you will get better speeds and connection of multiple devices like most people have nowadays, is that you actually have this technology switched on for your for downloads and uploads. So you can try it out. Again, does verify what devices you have, but I have some older devices, so I found this is the best option for me for download for those devices. Then we've got the beamforming. So we've got the two different kind one. So explicit beamforming is for legacy wireless network devices. So basically it's for your wireless B, G and N clients. So I think it's enabled by default. So you've got that one there, and then you've got universal as again is for legacy wireless network adapters that to support beamforming. So basically what beamforming is on these two is that if you have got older devices, it might be worth to actually you get more stable connection as well. To enable both of these at the same time is that these beamforming will actually work out where the other device is, if it's to the right, to the left, and how far away it is, and adjust accordingly the speeds and everything else. So it's quite clever technology, even the older one. So it might be worth actually having these switched on, and you might find your device is connecting a better rate and also more stable as well. Again, you've got TX power adjustment. So what that means is the power of the Wi-Fi signal. So I don't know what case, perhaps there might be a case where your Wi-Fi, but you're only in a one bedroom flat and you don't want all your neighbors having your Wi-Fi, or there's like a hacker next door. Literally you can bring down the performance of it, so you balanced and power saving, so you can bring it down then to your the adjustment, so the signal gets not so more powerful, so the signal won't go through several walls and things like that. But again, it's best to leave that at performance unless you've got a really need for it to actually bring the power down on it, then you can. So that's been most of the options there, and as I said, for the 5 gigahertz frequency, majority of these are the same. You'll have here for the enabling of the different features. The only ones perhaps you want to start having a look at, especially for the Wi-Fi 6 devices, is that making sure that this Wi-Fi 11AX feature is actually on for download and upload. I think it defaults to download only, like on the 2.4, but on my 5 gigahertz, and basically there should be newer devices anyway. This will give a much quicker speeds, and the router will be able to work much more efficiently and multitask by sending signals and receiving signals multiple times and much quicker. So basically it just makes it better at multitasking for downloads and uploads as well. So just make sure that you've got that one selected there, and all the rest is roughly the same. I think the only one again is the beamforming here. You want to make sure that's enabled, because this is for the AX beamforming. So this is a specific one where in Wi-Fi 6 it's much more intelligent, where it works out where devices are, how far they are, and it communicates with them and much more efficiently and much more quicker. So that will give you much more stable speeds as well. So leave that to enabled, and everything else can be the default, I think, unless you really want to change things like the threshold or intervals. As we said, if you've got unstable networks, you can try lowering that number. Again, so I think I've gone through most of the options here. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section and I'll try and get back to you. I hope you found this a little bit useful. I know it's been a long video, and again I'll put the chapters in so hopefully you can skip back and forward, and I hope you found this useful. Thanks very much and have a great day.